It's great to see you again. We saw you earlier this year ahead of the primary in March. Now you've made it to those final two candidates. What have you learned so far on this journey and into your now runoff against Adam Schiff come this November?
Well, that I made the right decision. Almost a year ago, woke up in the morning and turned the TV on and saw the snarkiness between politicians and dysfunctional Washington and career politicians not representing us but representing power and quest for money. And looked for a pathway and found out it was very narrow, arguably the most difficult seat in America, being a moderate here in California for the U.S. Senate. And then we put a great team together, a campaign team. And then we started going out, and this was one of the places we needed to come to first and to talk to people, talk to you, and see what you thought, your feelings. And then by October 10th, we announced. And there's never a good time to announce, right? It was 3 days after the Israeli war broke out. But we still reached almost 18 million people with our communications team. And we knew there were three things that I was going to focus on. And that was common sense and compassion and consensus building in this one-party state. And we're never better than when we have two voices, that we needed a voice, and that I had a pretty loud one. Garvey 1.0, played baseball for 20 years in Los Angeles and San Diego. And that the things that I believed in way back then are what's the foundation of when California was successful, the heartbeat of America. And you always think of middle America, where the heartland is. For California, it's Kern County and Bakersfield and Central Valley. So we started here, and we've come back now. 83 days left to the general. We made great strides, and if you look at what happened on that day of March 4th, we were literally dead even with Congressman Schiff, and we beat him by 300,000 in the election there for the temporary seat. So we've got momentum. People are standing up, and the most important thing is they're saying, we don't know why we haven't stood up before, but with you, we know you, we believe in you, we believe you'll always be fair and honest, and you'll be our voice.
One of the biggest issues for voters here in Kern County and things that they experience on a day-to-day basis are related to the border and the southern border. We were wondering what your border policy is, especially when it relates to immigration and visas, and what your policy looks like, because I know it's a bit of a complicated issue and one that Central Valley residents really want to see solved.
I said, first of all, I will go where the people of California need answers. And we went to the border in San Diego, and we spent a whole day there, 12 hours, and we saw what was happening there. And it's not as violent as other areas in Arizona and Texas, but in a way it's even more serious, because 20, 30 people come through, raise their hands, and then are processed, and 72 hours later they go out into America with a debit card, bus ticket, and if you stay in California, welfare. So what we realized is that we need to shut down the border. And what we need to do is start to address the issues that are very important. And say, for instance, Central Valley, Kern County, we need to maintain a process in which the farmers and the ranchers and oil business that use the Hispanic and Latino people as a significant source of their human resources, that they continue to work together so that these families who have become such an integral part here continue to do that. We have to realize that we have to address the existential crisis of fentanyl, of trafficking, of human beings. Let's find the cartels, root them out. We need to reinforce ICE, which really gets deeper into our communities in America. I mean, this is a crisis, and although I'm very concerned about our global position in terms of national defense, it's implosion from within that I'm more concerned about. And it's cities and states in this area that I will be tireless to fight for your rights, to fight against crime, and to make sure that people who come to this country, and there are tens of thousands around the world who have gone to an embassy, have done it the right way, sitting there waiting to come here, and have seen 10 to 15 million people allowed to go in front of them. And that's just not fair.
Agriculture, like he mentioned, is pretty big here in the Central Valley. We are the heartland of California. And during my time here the past 2 years, I've spoken to a lot of people that work in the fields, farm workers in specific, and people that work with farm workers. And recently there's been a death, a worker got crushed to death. And a lot of the reasons and a lot of what I've learned here is that these workers are often exploited because of their undocumented status. I'm wondering, what is your solution to that? What would you do regarding that? And if your opponent supports immigration reform, would you support something similar, or maybe a work permit?
Well, I think that's a natural process. I mean, what has worked in the past? That these generational working families have come to this country and they've been embraced by the ranchers and the farmers, and it's worked. Okay, let's keep that working. Let's not just say, okay, let's get all the people who are illegal and take them out of this country and send them back home. If you have been part of this culture here and have contributed to the community and have been a good hard worker, I'm willing to even cut a pathway to citizenship in half, to 5 years. If you can prove that you really do care about being an American citizen, we can go to China and live there and you're not going to become Chinese. Or you could go to Germany and live there and not going to become German. You come to America and you do it the right way and you become an American. You can feel it, you can sense it, you can see it. America's embraced our immigrants for 250 years now. So let's keep that process, not throw that into a big basket of let's, deport everybody, but start working on those critical issues that are affecting the fentanyl, the trafficking, the crime that's committed by those who have been allowed in without being vetted, that are the terrorists, probably 250, 300 now, that are systematically going to start to affect our country unless we go after them and then deport them.
So would you support something similar like Ronald Reagan that he passed back in 1986? It was a sort of immigration reform that provided amnesty to people that came to the United States undocumented before 1982. Would you support a similar process again? I mean, that was a Republican Party, but you're just now touting kind of, at least Donald Trump, mass deportation.
Well, I'm, obviously moderate. Single toughest position in America for moderate to run in. We're going to have to look at the situation. We're going to have to do all the existential crisis things first. Take, for instance, DACA. I mean, the children that were born here or come here, they had no say in that. They should have the right to become citizens. And then let's take each category and then address them. But let's first of all secure the border and stop this influx that's really devastating. Every day you hear about New York spending $8 billion last year, or San Francisco or LA, or the money spent here. So we're going to address it all, but you need one voice, one guy that's going to go to the U.S. Senate for one term and go to bat every day for all the people and for humanity.
Kern County, the majority, at least a little over half of the population is Latino. Why should they vote for you?
Well, it's interesting. I first came here September 1st of 1969. The Dodgers called me up and I put a Dodger uniform on. My dream came true. The great American dream. Being a little boy playing Little League and now Major League Baseball player. And then as time went on in the 70s, and then with Fernando's emergence in '81, the Hispanic and Latino community started to grow at Dodger Stadium. And they started to come watch me work every day. And they saw my dedication and compassion to entertaining them and being there for them. When my career was over, continued to do things in the Hispanic community to show them that they were part of me, that friendship was part of who Steve Garvey is and was. So the Latino community is a priority. And I said this in the last debate when the Telemundo anchor said to me, well, if you're a one-term senator, you'll be a lame duck. I said, you really think Steve Garvey will be a lame duck? I'll have a voice every day that media will want to come to about issues. And I will make the Latino community a priority with me because we have that kind of feeling back and forth. The grandfathers today and the fathers grew up with me. And they used to point to me and say, that's how you go to work every day. And that's how hard you work. And when you work hard, you'll get the benefits of it. Like I always say, reach for the moon. If you fall short, you'll be a star. But it's that hard work and dedication that the Latino community and I have in common. So they'll be a priority for me.
And as it relates to the border too, I know, and you mentioned this too, which is fentanyl, the smuggling of fentanyl over the border. We're seeing a statewide proposition, Prop 36, that's being on the ballot for folks. Do you think this is an issue that you support? I want to know that first. Then two, that also kind of helps your messaging as opposed to where Democrats' messaging has been for some time. And for people who support 36, even some Democrats, that Democrats are softer on crime.
Well, 47.
Well, 36 is the redo of 47. Yeah.
So you start with 47. And the way it was positioned, it was clouded, that people really didn't understand that this was ultimately going to support crime in the streets. He was going to take a felon and make them just a criminal with a misdemeanor. How could that possibly happen? How can you steal $1,000 worth of goods and not be prosecuted for it? Right? So my Democrat opponent, believes in defunding the police, closing jails and prisons, and erasing the borderline. I mean, all those things have an existential, on a daily basis, threat to our communities, to our families, to our children, to our grandparents. When you have that much crime, it's going to affect our community. And I'll be very, very strong on crime.
Is it an issue that you can see yourself winning over Democrat voters as well, that those who may be voting for a different candidate on the top of the ticket as far as president's concerned, but then also looking at yourself and seeing someone who can maybe make an impact if you're supporting this proposition on their everyday lives and how they live?
Gets back to common sense. Who wouldn't want your neighborhood to be secure? Who wouldn't want your city or your state or this country to know that it's safe? We're never better than when we are safe, when we get up each day, because then we feel we can accomplish anything. So I'll be a strong advocate for all the rules and laws, especially DAs. Los Angeles, George Gascon, has failed miserably in prosecuting criminals. Let's go back to in the spring when we had all these rioting on the campuses, and they were brought in and released within an hour with no penalties whatsoever for rioting, for literally hate crimes against the Jewish students. So let's enforce the laws to the fullest extent, so that people feel secure about living in America and being protected.
We've talked before about energy issues in our past interview, but California's moving away from oil. Kern County wants to stay in oil, and I imagine, in the Senate, as we've talked before, you're a big supporter of oil, and that may be what you are, but can you keep up with the policies of the state and still be an advocate in D.C.?
Oh, absolutely. When you're a strong voice for something, and people know you and trust you, that you've analyzed something, that you may be conservative, but you listen to both sides. And when you say that gas and oil is the foundation of this country, then you're talking about Kern County. You're talking about the generational families and companies here who have made California one of the most 6 or 7 largest industrial states in energy in the world. So when all of a sudden you see 13 different facilities closing down and the thousands of jobs that are lost, you have to say to yourself, this is an attack on not only Kern County in this area, but California. How can 60 to 70% of our energy been brought in from other areas? That's unconscionable when we have it all here ready to go, get back to work, free market capitalism, supply side, and that's all founded on gas and oil and energy.
The concern is also, you've heard it, climate change, and it's a bit of a balancing act. You obviously don't want people to lose their jobs here, but you also, you don't want the environment to become polluted. So what exactly will you do to balance between both of those needs?
Well, just like this administration, first day president, the president cancels gas and oil, right? Fracking, oil leases. And what does that do? That sends a tremendous tremor throughout all of society that affects our economy, right? It affects transportation. All these things suddenly that affect us on a daily basis, quality of life, cost of living, all basically because you shut down energy in this country. And I think what needs to be done, we need to open up the spigots again, especially this area in California, getting back to being vibrant, getting back to the California we know and love. America looks at California for leadership. And when they see us regulated and depressed, then they don't feel good about themselves. It's just like countries around the world looking at the United States. And how do we handle this? How do we handle Ukraine, Israel, possibility of Taiwan? How do we answer these existential threats like China and North Korea and Russia and so forth? But energy has to be constantly, and as U.S. Senator, vigilant, because we can make a difference. And my voice will get people together and talk, even people on the left, because they know it's not working.
Well, and just to follow up to that as well, in the same respect too, you have a federal government that at least it seems to acknowledge that there are some workers that are going to lose their jobs, and they want to make investments in Kern County in other ways too, whether it's solar and wind. Are those industries that you would be feeling supportive of and that you'd be a champion for if you were in the Senate too, or are you still going to be more concerned with saving those oil jobs?
No. Oil jobs priority, job number one. But let's look at other forms of energy. I'm a big believer in nuclear energy, and wind is a possibility. Hydro is a possibility. All these things need to be watched, analyzed, developed, and they'll be a part of our life. But what the administration did was they immediately shut gas and oil off, which, like I said, made that ripple that affected our economy, our cost of living, our quality of life. And when you do that, You're not, and by the way, all the money that went out, $1.2 trillion, went to those that they picked and choose to get that money, and not a fair open market in which people bid, in order to do the job.
Bringing more jobs is always good, right? But I've spoken to families several times that are dealing with some health issues, cancer, nosebleeds, asthma, allergies, because they're living really close to oil wells that are leaking. They're not, closed off. What do you propose the solution to that would be? I know it's hard, it's a complex issue, but
But it goes back to morals, character. God gave us free will and choice. He asked us to be responsible. So every industry should be responsible to the people it serves, to its employees, to the community. And that's why being responsible in terms of the environment is so very important. But when we have that collaboration, then we're really vibrant. And we're back to being that heartbeat of America now. But if those people are affected, then we should protect them. We should provide health services for them, welfare if it's needed. So, like I said, part of my trilogy of common sense, that compassion will always be there. And I think it can be done.
Well, a bit of a follow-up to that too. I know it's a major concern with water and water safety in this area. And we had, at the start of the summer, we had a community that went without water of 200 people for some time, for a couple weeks. I know that the big issue there is infrastructure and supporting the financing from the Senate and from the House to come together on infrastructure agreements. The question is, when do you look at it and say, this is too big of a spending bill, or do you look at it and say, I know this money is going to go to my community, even if it's worth adding extra debt to the country?
I'll be the senator from California. Yeah. That's job one. That's my priority. And water is liquid gold, especially in this area. There are trillions of dollars that are sitting out there that haven't been used for monies that were given to entities during COVID. Let's start to bring back all that money and start to put the money where it's going to benefit the most, and especially in a vibrant area here. If you have all the water you need, then you're going to be able to produce the food, agriculture, cattle, whatever it is. And we're feeding not only this area in California and this country, but we're feeding the world. Let's look at where the priorities are, where the money should go. Take, for instance, the train, right? It's supposed to go from where to where, this bullet train and so forth, that was originally supposed to be $8 billion, and now it's projected to be $125 billion and going on, and it's been, 13, 14 years, and the rail hasn't been running. Okay, let's stop this silliness and put money where it should go to help the people. And let's divert that and find ways to make bigger canals, more accessibility, the Delta Project, right? Let's make sure. My opponents have come by here and said, when asked about that, we're doing our research now. There's no need to do research. That water should stop here first and allow it to flow down and benefit all of California. But let's benefit those people that are making the biggest difference in the quality of life.
Well, I want to ask you your ultimate favorite question, which is...
Dodgers or Giants?
Dodgers and Giants too, and Padres. I know you also want to get the San Diego vote in there as well.
Absolutely.
But I want to ask you about Trump, because he's made some comments since Kamala Harris has jumped to the top of the ticket. Is he still someone that you support and will plan on voting for this November?
Well, as I just mentioned, I'm running for the single most difficult job in America. That's the U.S. Senator who's moderate. My focus is on that. Now, and I think our opportunity to vote is the single greatest currency that we Americans have. So it should be thoughtful, it should be well thought out. When you take a look at two candidates, which one is going to better serve the quality of life and the cost of living for our families, for our future, for our grandparents? President Trump has a history. What did he do during those 4 years? Were we better off 4 years ago under his presidency? Well, we were. So I'll make the decision when the time comes. I voted for him twice. I'm going to vote for him again under the circumstances right now. The new alignment, the monarchy, so to speak, without a truly elected candidate, is the same issues, the same failing issues that we've had to deal with over the last 3, now going on 4 years.
Well, I think another question on that too would be, what if Harris and Walz end up moving a little bit more to the center and to the moderate zone? They've already started to co-opt some of Trump's policies and things of that nature as well. Even the way that they do their commercials are starting to sound like a Trump or a Republican commercial. Is there any convincing you to go back towards the middle? I know you say where you are right now, but would you change if you see them moving to an area that maybe supports Californians more than his vision does?
Can you ever trust anybody, especially in politics? that have put this economy and this country in dire straits. We've never been more threatened than we are around the world, and implosion from within, at what this administration has done. And all of a sudden they start to do a 180 because they're listening to the polls. People are telling me, these elected officials, career politicians, have failed us. It's time for change. It's time for somebody like Steve Garvey, who stepped up at a time in his life where I've had a wonderful life. I could continue doing the things I want to do, but maybe, just maybe, this will be my legacy, that I've helped the people of California get out of this. You know, we lead the misery index, which is a quotient of inflation and taxation and lack of jobs in the country. So let's get back to getting out of that misery quotient and get back to a happiness quotient in which people are now really feeling that they're gaining on life. Their children are going to good schools. We're saving for their future. We're saving for our retirement. Each day when we wake up, Mom isn't feeling like, I can make the whole menu for the rest of this week. I don't know if we can afford it. Small businesses, 80,000 small businesses in California. Half of those are at their limits. They can't do anything else now. If they're forced another dollar or two in terms of hourly wage, they'll fold. And small businesses are the foundation of California, this country.
How do you differentiate yourself from Adam Schiff? You know, we talk about two people who, he's one who's also not afraid to jump on with the media and talk as well. We're grateful to have you here in Kern County to talk with us today as well. How do you get ahead of him on talking to folks, or is it not the talk, it's the action? And as what you were saying before, the contrast between where you are and where he is as a career politician, as you'd put it.
Well, the first thing I said to the people, I'll never lie to the people. I'll always represent their voice. Number two, I will go wherever I have to go to get the answers for these people. And we've been to the border several times. I've done ride-alongs to see the crime in narcotics division. I've gone to Israel. The end of June, we went to Israel for 7 days. And those 7 days, 4 or 5 different meetings a day to find out what exactly was happening with Israel. And I've said this before. I'll stand with Israel yesterday, today, and tomorrow. They're one of our greatest allies, our only ally really in the Middle East, and they need to be protected at all costs. But we could never tell them that they can't protect their sovereignty. But this is the stance we need to take. This is a stance I believe we need to support. And when it's all said and done, you know, I will every day go up to bat for the people of California, for Kern County, and for them to know that when I'm done in 6 years, people will say, well, what senator do you think made the most difference in the last generation? And I hope they say that I will.
Since COVID started, Bakersfield was one of the places that received an influx of people coming in due to its cheaper cost of living, pricing out people that actually lived here. What is your solution, I guess, that you would propose to, you know, so people's paychecks can, you know, be used a little bit more, go a little bit farther than they're going right now?
Yeah, well, let's get that cost of living down. Let's get back to what I said before, opening up the spigots for gas and oil. That's amazing how it will affect. Let's stop the excessive spending by this administration to trillions of dollars. And then once that happens, we start to get a flow of money into the system with that free market capitalism and supply side. And now more jobs will open up because there'll be more necessity. Let's get back to these oil wells drilling again, right? And getting these thousands of people back here. You know, somebody told me today, when was the first time you came here? I said 50 years ago. He said, you liked it, didn't you? I said, I did, because it's about the people. The people make, you know, the area.
And there's been several rent control laws or attempts here in the Central Valley, particularly in Delano was one of those places where the initiative kind of failed. But would you support any sort of rent control across California, since people can't buy homes, rent is more expensive? That's one of the biggest concerns for a lot of working class people.
I think it falls into what we're talking about inflation in the economy, especially for young people. You know, a home is probably the single greatest currency you'll have between the ages of 25 to 40. And it's not affordable now because of mortgage rates, because of availability, because of cost of living. I mean, how much money are you actually taking home with each paycheck? You know, California, 80% of California breaks even or loses money every month. So until we get that money flowing again because of the common things we just talked about, the basics of unlocking, you know, the economy. And let's go back to deregulation. Let's face it. Regulation straps the people, corporations, government And let's open up that deregulation again. And I guarantee you, in a short amount of time, you'll see all these things that are suppressing the people and families. There'll be a smile on their face again.
Does speaking to folks have a different impact as people recognizing you as first baseman Steve Garvey, television celebrity Steve Garvey, as opposed to Republican Steve Garvey? Does that give you an extra advantage, especially when it comes to issues like this where, yes, you're more moderate, I know you say it's a tougher position, but it allows you maybe to have that conversation that other politicians can't?
Well, because of, the foundation from when I was 20 to 40, basically, of really growing up, raising a family, being in California, people knowing me. And the most important thing is, we talked about God giving us free will and choice. Well, I chose to take that celebrity and give back to charities in the community, talk about responsible voting, all these things, so that people pretty much know who I am. But it's important now at 75 that Steve Garvey 2.0 actually goes throughout the state, which we have. And you should have told me it's 800 miles long and 250 miles wide. But, over the 50 years I've been around a lot. But now, and the reason I decided was because we walked around, we actually came here and looked people in the eye and said, what is your life all about? In 15 or 20 minutes, they poured their heart out about how difficult it was and how they feel like they don't have control of their children anymore. Who would have ever thought that? That crime is rampant. All the things that affect our daily life. So that people know that, when I took that field, I didn't take the field for independents, Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, but I took the field for all the fans, and I'm the only candidate that's running for all the people.
You mentioned deregulation. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? What do you mean by deregulation on the previous comment?
Well, deregulating, especially when you talk about oil and you talk about farming, there are regulations put on what you can do and what you can't do. Where in essence, we talked about what? Responsibility. If you're a farmer and responsible to your community in your growing, then you should have the chance to be able to help get the market generated. We, the consumer, will dictate when we feel that a company or corporation is fair, providing a good product at a good price, and is a good citizen. And those things can only happen when you take off regulations that are really made to control us. It's almost a socialist, a Marxist environment that's being created.
Well, and you're speaking mostly the permitting or permitting in general.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, everybody has to have the right in their business world to be able to provide a quality product at an affordable price so that it benefits both sides. And I think that's what we need to get back to. If you put too many restrictions, it eliminates, especially in the building area, you have a problem getting materials. And then once, say, you do put a community together, a hedge fund will come in and make you an offer that you can't refuse. Take that and now rent the properties out so that you can't buy a property that you probably could afford. That will be the single greatest asset that you have. So we've got to get back to that common sense again and deregulation, getting America back to work again, and getting them out to the ballpark every day. Can we talk about homeless?
We have a mayor who's been trying to be very aggressive as far as getting state funding, but it seems to be the same issue that a lot of places across the state have, which is that there's only so much you can do with people who refuse housing, for people who want to remain unsheltered. The success rate of folks who are getting sheltered is around 90% as far as folks who want to be taken in and receive sheltering. Mm-hmm. But then when it comes to unsheltered, there's not much action that can be taken. So I guess that's the question, which is, how do you start treating the people that are unsheltered?
Well, let's first go back to the last 4 years when $25 billion was sent to California. And when I'm your next U.S. elected senator, I will go back to Washington. And one of the first issues is demanding an audit as to where that money went to. Because it was not used properly. If it was used properly, why are there still so many people in the streets? We've been to downtown in San Diego, Los Angeles, which is a crisis, San Francisco, Sacramento, and it keeps growing at 15%. Where did the money go to? Let's find out where it went to. Was it given to people that they don't want to benefit and so forth? We've been down the streets. My opponents don't go down. They'll throw money at it, but they won't go down and actually look at the homeless, talk to them. How long have you been here? Do you get enough food each week? What kind of shelter do you have? Do you feel people care about you? When they look at you, say, nobody cares. Where did that money go to?
Well, I know where some of that money went to, because in a rural homelessness grant that was given to the state from Senator Alex Padilla helped to fund and support to get it from HUD, The problem was for rural homelessness, the vast majority of the money, I think it was about $26 million, went to Santa Clara and Long Beach, not necessarily rural homeless areas. So I guess what does that look like as far as getting money in the millions of dollars to Kern County? Because as much as we'd like, as much as we can take, it's definitely not going to solve the issue if it probably doesn't have several numbers and figures to it.
If we do the audit, then we're going to find out what it is. Let's stop crime and corruption in the United States at the sacrifice of those people that are probably at the lowest part of their life. We have programs there. Let's talk to them, get them who are probably affected by drugs and mental illness to finally say, I'm willing to get off the street. What can you do for me? And these great projects now take them into a 5, 6, 7-step program, so that within a year they're able to go out and get a job and get dignity back in their hearts. And I think that's as Americans, the thing we care about most, as God asks us to do, to give back and to help others.
It was last week, right? Newsom went to LA and he was clearing out homeless accounts.
Well, yeah, after the executive order that he handed down from last week, do you think that's a helpful executive order?
Well, it was a great photo op for the governor, and I don't think he has an area to send the homeless that he believes you just take them off the streets. And he'll give it to committees, and the committees will take time and years, and the homeless will still be in the same situation. Come up with a plan that you're able to convince the homeless to come off the streets, which is going to benefit our small businesses and citizens, by the way, too. We forget about that part of it. And to get them in a position where they can get back to be contributing human beings.
Well, not that we shouldn't have Los Angeles and places like that be nice for ourselves in the own time too, but there's definitely going to be a highlight on Los Angeles and Southern California and Central California when it comes to the World Cup coming up in a couple of years. Then you have the Olympics coming up in 28. We're fresh off the heels of the ones in Paris. But is it about also making a good look across the country and being that example that a lot of people would suggest, I imagine you would suggest California once was when it came to this issue?
Well, look what happened. We have the World Health Organization come to San Francisco, and the governor cleaned up the streets for 7 to 10 days.
Yeah, President China.
Yeah. We don't want short term. We want permanent answers for the humanity of these people. And once that starts happening, then California will start to come back. But it's not going to happen with my opponent. It's not going to happen with a progressive. It's going to happen with good, solid, conservative, moderate addressing the real needs and issues.
I used to, I was in San Francisco during the pandemic, and one of the issues, homelessness, one of the issues that came up in housing homeless people, during the pandemic, they opened up hotels, and then they were housing them to, have quarantine. But then what happened was a lot of other homeless people from other areas across the state and outside of California started hearing about this and showing up. So it seems like they do something, but then something else happens. I mean, it's such a complicated issue. What do you suggest? I mean, more housing, more, what can people do, really?
Well, it's always, it's just like a situation in Ukraine. I mean, we get involved and we help a democracy, but we never have an exit strategy, right? We always have an entry, but we don't have an exit strategy. So what does the exit strategy have to be? And it has to be, you have to have a convenient place that's going to protect you. We have to have mental health, right? Address that. We have to get crime off the streets with the drug dealers, like that, so it doesn't perpetuate there. So when all these things are addressed and there's a system and there's a program and it's funded properly, and we in the federal government realize that, and oh, by the way, one of my ideas, so let's get corporate America involved. Let's get the hedge funds that are making $1 trillion to spend some of that money on programs and let them compete against each other to take the homeless off the streets. Instead of taking all this money, and the Big Seven and Wall Street are doing great, because there's a big disparity between Wall Street and Main Street, right? Just as they're the wealthy and welfare state. Let's stimulate them. I'll go back and I'll say, I'm forming a coalition. Who wants to come with me? And why don't you guys compete to help the homeless off the streets? Do something from your heart. Show people that you really care, instead of an administration that says, oh, we're not taxing the wealthy enough. We should tax them more. Corporations aren't paying their fair share. Ask them. Maybe they will.
Well, that was my last thing for you. I know when you talk about taking field for all Californians, do you realize that also means Giants fans?
Absolutely. So, finally I was down to, the ninth inning of trying to decide whether to run or not. And we live in Palm Desert. There's a wonderful shopping street there. And my wife Candace and I are walking down the street one morning. We walk early. And I look, and here's two guys walking at us, and one of them has a Giants hat on. And they get close and they go, "Oh my God, it's Garvey." And they came up and they said, "Listen, Steve, we hate the Dodgers, but we'll vote for you." And I looked up and said, "Candace, that's a message from God right there." The two Giant fans said that. But that's California for you. You can have different teams, but at the end of the day, you're a Californian, and America looks at California for leadership.
You're not going to expect to see many Garvey 6 Giants jerseys coming out?
Only Thomas Keller has one of those, my dear friend, the old chef there. But yeah, thanks for having me back.
Thank you for talking to us.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming in.